My name is Jennifer Chen, and this is the story of how I learned that sometimes, the quietest person in the room holds all the power. Life has a funny way of flipping the script. One moment, I was the overlooked cousin, fetching coffee and enduring condescending remarks. The next, I was signing my relatives' termination papers. But let's start at the beginning. In my family, my Aunt Victoria was always the outlier. While her siblings pursued respectable careers, doctors, lawyers, accountants, she built a tech empire from nothing. Chen Innovations grew into a multi-billion-dollar company under her leadership. Yet you'd never know it from looking at her. She dressed simply, drove an aging sedan, and lived in the same modest house she bought when the company was just a startup. Unlike my cousins, Marcus and Diana, who flaunted their wealth and privilege, I spent my weekends at Aunt Victoria's side, learning to code on her old computer. Business isn't about fancy degrees, Jenny, she'd tell me as I struggled through debugging my first program. It's about seeing what others overlook. When my parents died in a car accident, Aunt Victoria took me in. The rest of the family whispered that she did it out of guilt for not helping my father when he was struggling financially. But I knew better. She saw potential in me that no one else did. For 15 years, I worked my way up at Chen Innovations, starting at the bottom. While Marcus and Diana partied through college, I was learning the ins and outs of the business, customer service, product development, operations. They mockingly called me Aunt Victoria's shadow. I ignored them. Then came the diagnosis: pancreatic cancer, stage 4. Aunt Victoria faced it the way she faced everything, with quiet determination. One evening, as we sat in her home office, she placed a sealed envelope in my hands. "Promise me something, Jenny," she said, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "Anything," I whispered, choking back tears. "Don't let them know how smart you are." "Not yet, timing is everything." I didn't understand what she meant at the time, but soon, I would. She passed away 3 months later, peacefully in her sleep. Her funeral was packed with tech industry giants, but my cousins managed to turn it into their personal spotlight. Marcus delivered a tearful speech about his beloved aunt, whom he had barely visited in years. Diana sobbed dramatically for the cameras, designer handbag in hand. But the real show began at the will reading. The family gathered at Chen Innovations headquarters, fully expecting Marcus, the eldest male heir, to inherit the company. It was tradition. It was expected. The lawyer, Mr. Patterson, cleared his throat and began reading. First, the usual, small bequests to longtime employees, donations to charities. Then, the moment everything changed. "And to my niece, Jennifer Chen, I leave my controlling interest in Chen Innovations, comprising 70% of all voting shares. The remaining 30% will be distributed among current employees based on years of service." Silence, then, chaos. "This is outrageous," Marcus bellowed, his face turning red. "She's just a junior employee. She doesn't even have an MBA. Diana's mascara streaked as she wailed. "We're the rightful heirs. She's just some pity project Aunt Victoria took in." Their father, my Uncle James, stood up, his voice shaking. "There must be some mistake. Victoria wouldn't leave everything to the help," Diana finished, venom in her voice. Mr. Patterson remained unfazed. "There's no mistake, and, for your information," he pulled out another document, "Miss Jennifer Chen has been serving as Deputy CEO in secret for the past 2 years. All documentation is in order." I sat quietly, remembering Aunt Victoria's words. Timing is everything. This wasn't the moment to speak, not yet. The family gathered later at Uncle James's mansion, the one he bought with money borrowed from Aunt Victoria years ago. I was invited, though it was clear I wasn't seen as an equal. "Jenny, be a dear and serve the coffee," Marcus's mother, Helen, said with a smile as sweet as poison. "That's what you're good at, right? Serving others?" I said nothing, simply pouring their drinks as they discussed their next move, right in front of me. "We need to contest the will," Uncle James declared. I hid my smile. Let them think I was just the quiet one in the room. They had no idea what was coming. Victoria wasn't thinking clearly near the end. "Obviously," Marcus sneered, not even glancing at me as I refilled his cup. "Look at her, she doesn't have what it takes to run a billion-dollar company. She's not even dressed properly." He wasn't wrong about my clothes. My blouse and slacks were modest compared to their designer ensembles. But what they didn't know was that I owned the building their favorite luxury brand's flagship store operated from. The board will never accept her, Diana added, checking her reflection in her phone. They need someone with the right education, the right connections. I said nothing, continuing to pour coffee, watching them plan my downfall as if I weren't even in the room. For hours, they strategized, legal challenges, board member alliances, media manipulation. Not once did they acknowledge me directly. To them, I wasn't a threat, I was just the quiet one, the background figure. Finally, Uncle James turned his attention to me. Jenny, this can be easy or difficult. Sign over the shares to Marcus, and we'll make sure you're well taken care of. A generous settlement, enough to live comfortably. It's what's best for everyone. I looked at them, the same people who had barely spoken to me at family gatherings, who had mocked my close relationship with Aunt Victoria, who had dismissed me as a charity case. I set the coffee tray down carefully. I'll think about it, I said softly. The board meeting is on Monday. I'll have my answer then. Their relief was immediate. Marcus even had the audacity to pat my head. Good girl, I knew you'd see reason. I smiled politely, then I left. The moment I stepped outside, I pulled out my phone, and the envelope Aunt Victoria had given me. Inside were documents, passwords, and a letter. The time for hiding is over, she had written. Show them who you really are. I opened my email drafts and hit send. Monday's board meeting would be eventful. Monday morning dawned crisp and clear. I arrived at Chen Innovations headquarters at 6 a.m., 2 hours before the meeting. The security guards nodded as I passed. They'd known for years who really ran things. I had heard whispers that Marcus and Diana had spent the weekend calling board members, trying to rally support for their coup. Let them. I changed into the outfit I had prepared, not one of their flashy designer suits, but a sleek, perfectly tailored black dress, one Aunt Victoria had given me for my last birthday. Power isn't about looking powerful, she had told me, it's about being powerful. By 7:45, I watched from my office window as Marcus and Diana arrived, their parents in tow. They looked smug, dressed as if they were attending a fashion show rather than a board meeting. I picked up the stack of folders I had prepared. Time to greet the family. The boardroom was already tense when I entered. 12 board members sat around the long table, with my family clustered at one end. Marcus was lounging in the CEO's chair, smirking. Jenny, Diana called sweetly, be a dear and get us some coffee before you go. I smiled, of course, but first, I pressed the intercom. Sarah, please bring in the documents. The boardroom doors opened, and my executive assistant, the one my cousins had dismissed as just a secretary, walked in, pushing a cart of neatly arranged folders. One by one, she placed them in front of each board member. Marcus frowned. What's this? He reached for my folder, but I pulled it away before he could touch it. Patience, cousin, I murmured, all will be clear in a moment. Once the last folder was distributed, I turned toward him. You're in my seat. Marcus laughed. Come on, Jenny, we all know Aunt Victoria never seriously meant for you to. You are in my seat. My voice was calm, sharp, unyielding. Something in my tone made him hesitate. Then, in an attempt to save face, he let out an exaggerated chuckle and stood, as if it had been his decision. The board members were already reading their folders, their expressions shifting as they took in the contents. I watched as realization dawned on them. Ladies and gentlemen of the board. And just like that, the game was mine. In those folders, you'll find several things. The room was dead silent as I began. First, a detailed report of every major decision made at Chen Innovations over the last 5 years. You'll notice my signature on 90% of them. The decisions you thought were made by others, they were actually mine. Marcus shifted in his seat. Next, documentation of some rather questionable financial transactions. I turned to him. Marcus, would you like to explain to the board why $2 million of company funds were used to cover your gambling debts last year? His face turned ghostly white. That's confidential. Not anymore. Diana was already flipping frantically through her folder. I turned to her next. Perhaps you'd like to explain the fake consulting firm you set up, billing the company for services that never actually existed? Her head snapped up. You can't prove. Oh, but I can. I smiled coldly. Aunt Victoria and I documented everything. We let it slide, hoping you'd grow up, become responsible. We were wrong. Uncle James shot up from his chair, his face purple with rage. Now see here. Sit down, Uncle. My voice was quiet, but it cut through the room like a blade. Your section is on page 12, the irregular loans, the misappropriated funds, the shell companies. Would you like me to continue? He collapsed back into his seat. I turned to the board. For years, I worked quietly, learning every aspect of this company, while others took credit for my work. I let them, because Aunt Victoria taught me something invaluable. True power doesn't need recognition, it needs results. I clicked a button, and the screen behind me lit up with charts. Under my leadership, though others claimed credit, our RD productivity increased by 200%, client retention hit 98%, profit margins doubled. The board members leaned forward, reviewing their folders, many of them finally understanding why certain departments had mysteriously improved over the years. Now, I continued, we have two choices. Option 1, you can support my cousin's attempted coup. In that case, I'll have no choice but to release all of this information to the media and the proper authorities. I pressed another button, displaying legal documents on the screen. Option 2, we move forward with the expansion plans I've been developing, 5 new tech centers, partnerships with leading AI research facilities, and a revolutionary product line that will put us years ahead of our competitors. Silence. The board members exchanged glances, doing the math in their heads. Finally, Mr. Rodriguez, the longest-serving board member, cleared his throat. I moved to formally confirm Jennifer Chen as CEO of Chen Innovations, effective immediately. Seconded. Multiple voices rang out at once. Marcus shot out of his chair. This is ridiculous. She's nothing. She's nobody. She's just the poor little orphan that. Marcus, I turned to him, my voice cold. You're fired. His mouth snapped shut. Security is waiting outside to escort you from the building. Diana jumped up. You can't do this, she shrieked. We're family. I met her gaze, calm and unyielding. Was I family when you made me serve coffee? Her breath hitched. Was I family when you mocked my clothes, my education, my dedication to Aunt Victoria? She had no answer. No, Diana, you made it very clear what you thought of me as family. The doors opened, and security entered, guards who had known my true role for years. Uncle James, Aunt Helen, I turned to them. You have a choice. Accept my leadership and keep your shares as silent partners, or join your children in unemployment. They hesitated, looked at each other, then at their screaming children being dragged out. They nodded meekly. As the chaos faded, I turned back to the board. Now, shall we discuss those expansion plans? The next few hours were productive. By the end of the day, my position was secure, the expansion plans were approved, and a press release announcing new leadership was circulating. That evening, I sat in Aunt Victoria's old office, my office now, gazing at her photo. You taught me well, I whispered. Power isn't about shouting the loudest or wearing the most expensive clothes. It's about patience, knowledge, timing. My phone buzzed, messages from suddenly affectionate family members, eager to reconnect. I ignored them all. Except one. Maria, Aunt Victoria's old housekeeper, the only one who had ever been truly kind to me. You did good, Miss Jenny, your aunt would be proud. I smiled, looking out over the city lights. The company would thrive under my leadership, not because I was born into privilege, but because I had earned every step of my success. Marcus and Diana? Last I heard, they were trying to start their own company. Good luck to them. For the first time in their lives, they'd have to learn what real work meant. As for me, I kept Aunt Victoria's lessons close to heart. Success isn't about being seen as powerful. It's about being powerful. And sometimes, the quietest person in the room is the one who owns it.